Teresa Oaxaca is an absolutely brilliant artist, trained in classical realism at several different atelier settings. After those years of training, she's moved on and developed a distinctive voice that I think most of us would look at and say is decidedly of today and decidedly of Teresa Oaxaca. In this conversation with her, I sit down and we talk about all sorts of things, ranging from training to contemporary art to what the goal of the classical realist is. I hope that you take the time to check out her work and that you enjoy this conversation with her. Hey, Teresa, thanks so much for joining me for this conversation. I've been looking forward to it for a while. I really appreciate your work and some of the things that you're thinking about, as well as doing with your painting. I think my class is going to really appreciate as well some of the things that you have to say about making and art in general. So thanks.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our talk.
Yep. So let's just start off with like a super easy question. In your view, what is art?
Art is a form of decorative expression, visual decorative expression, I suppose, and it's something that is almost exclusive to the Homo sapiens. But
Yeah.
I think there's examples of fish and birds, and uh, I think like maybe most animals wear their art in like the form of plumage or markings, and for some reason we happen to be sort of naked, and then we feel like we have to put clothes on, then we have to make paintings or we have to make drawings, and then there's other kinds of art, like if we just say the arts, there's like, the
Sure.
music and the science, there's everything. So we've invented all these ways of communicating and expressing and yeah, it's a communication expression, and then it's also probably a bit about attraction, and then there's also that interesting like propaganda, maybe that's a
Mhm.
bad word, but like trying to persuade
Yeah.
people of an idea. So a lot of art has been persuasion, and that you see that a lot in advertising and in today.
Visual
Or
rhetoric.
like people always say, like, um, religious imagery was persuasive, or I don't know, people who would go to war and spend a month making a canoe and decorating it and coming up with war outfits. Like, I don't know, there's
Yeah.
just all these cool examples of art and history and today.
Yeah. So you said something that I think is pretty interesting there. You mentioned animals that wear their art, and you contrasted that with us that are born naked and we make art to go on us and to go in around in our environment. Do you think that art is a conscious act? Because I would say like a bird doesn't have a conscious act as to what its plumage looks like.
Yeah, it's definitely a conscious act. I mean, there's people like us who make our whole careers of, if not just creating art, teaching it,
Hmm.
or investigating it. So
Yeah.
there's whole careers on just and it's in many cases it's considered a privilege to be an artist. So it's like a prized career to have. It's a pleasurable activity. It's seen as the sometimes the in the hierarchy of needs, it's kind of like the thing you get to enjoy at the top when you've taken care of everything else. You go out to an opera house or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And really, I think something that's fascinating is that just from the work that I did in like ancient Near Eastern studies, when you look at stuff that's coming out of archaeological digs, you often find that even people who we would say like haven't reached the top of the Maslow's hierarchy, they're still decorating their clay pots and little figurines that they have in their houses. So it's sort of like it's just an act that we feel compelled to do.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. And yeah, I think about this a lot. I mean, I think that in a really maybe like sophisticated society or civilization, you know, you have people who don't need to decorate their own clay pots because they can just invest in fashion, for example. Like I've thought about that. It's like if you have a very well-off woman who's a like successful, I don't know, whatever, stockbroker or lawyer or
Sure.
something, she's probably not, unless it's some kind of relaxation thing, she's probably not decorating all the pots. But she's like buying nice fashion, and that's her way of expressing herself. And then you have people like me when I was younger, and I was like, you know, that was my art. I was like, I want to make art everywhere. I want to, because I didn't have it around me as much. Maybe I couldn't afford it, so I was like, I'm gonna make it from scratch. So it's like,
Hmm.
uh, I think it depends on like, of course, like where you are in life, but I think that you're always gonna want to have it in some way, whether you're supplying it or purchasing it from someone or
Yeah.
just um, moving to a location where there's like an art scene. You know, you move to a
Hmm.
certain neighborhood, you're getting your dose of art one way or another. So I
Yeah.
think everyone's very artistic in their own way.
Why do you think why do you think we do that just as humans? Either make or surround ourselves by made things. What do you think it is about that process that's just like ingrained into us?
I think it's probably just a need. That's what I was thinking. You know,
Yeah.
it's a need. Like people, because I just know like there'll be a lot of artists who, you know, they're making the art all the time, and they'll criticize people who have money who buy art, and they'll spend lots
Yeah.
of money. And it's like I think it's just a need that people have, and they need to satisfy it, um, one way or another. You know, like um, whether it's like just making art all the time,
Hmm.
or um, you know, going. I knew people who used to have lunch every day because they worked in DC, in the
Yeah.
Smithsonian area. They just go to an art museum for lunch. They'd meet their friends. And that was like their way of getting in,
Nice.
you know. And you'd be walking by it and seeing it,
Yeah.
and I feel like maybe in areas where you just don't have as much art and history around you, you see more people like making it grassroots.
Yeah.
Where it's just
Yeah.
like there's a bit of it, they don't really think about it. It's just everywhere. They get it, they wear it, you
Hmm.
know. And I don't think there's like a wrong way to go about it. I think it's just a need, and if it wasn't a need, it wouldn't be a big deal then.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've seen you post pictures before on social media, I think, of you running around DC, like when you go running to
Oh,
exercise.
yeah. Yeah, like photos of the city from
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like doing that.
Do you
There,
think, go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say, I think I was doing a lot of it during COVID, so it was empty, and so
Yeah.
uh, it was just I've never seen the mall area in Washington empty like that. Like there's usually always, you know, you would complain about the tourists or something.
Hmm.
Nothing, you know, so it kind of looks like splendid and pristine.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not really. There's like all this construction projects and fences up, but like if you get the right photo, you know,
That's
it's
right.
like wow, I've never in my life seen it this like empty looking. It was just something kind of amazing and kind of like post apocalyptic looking too.
Yeah.
You know, like Greek revival, neoclassical kind of
Hmm.
buildings. You know, um, I just liked it. It was very poetic.
Do you think, or I'm interested in the ways in which you feel the architecture around you as art influencing you or making you feel things. This is sort of in line with us, you know, surrounding ourselves with art.
For me, it's quite important to me. So that's why I'll run that way and not the other
Yeah.
way. Or that's why, you know, when I was traveling for workshops, I usually pick places in Europe or older cities in
Hmm.
America and well, like Canada, Mexico, like that had like, you know,
Yeah.
collections of artifacts or great museums or just, you know, that kind of thing. So I could like see the culture in different levels of, you know, history. So you could go all the way back in an archaeology museum, for example, in
Yeah.
Mexico City, or you could just walk around the city and see the modern culture. And it was very nice. So I like the culturally rich areas with layers of history in them, like Rome or something like that. I'm sure I'd love
Yeah.
Egypt if I went. You know, yeah, I don't know if I'd want to live somewhere without that kind of um, array of history and
Yeah.
museums like that. I think also those places tend to be a little more safe too. If you're just traveling, you want to be in a place where um, it's kind of cosmopolitan, and you can spend money to get accommodation, and
Hmm.
there's friendly people. Like, you're an artist, you teach, you sell paintings. Like, they're like, okay, we'll employ you and buy your paintings. Like, there's something for me to do there. So
Yeah.
it also is just, that's my niche. So I'm drawn to those places as well, because that's like where I'm most useful, and probably in like the least amount of danger as well. Like, if it's, I don't know how well I would survive like hiking in the Amazon jungle or something. Like I'd like to do it, but like it's not my environment.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's beautiful, but I like to be somewhere where I don't have to worry about poisonous snakes and things like that. Like, I'm like, okay, this is my environment. I'm trained to do this, and this is what I
Hmm.
do.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm sure that's also part of why we like things like that.
Yeah. Turning a corner a little bit. So this class that I'm teaching right now is trying to think about and explore the connection between contemporary art and realism, or classical realism, or however you want to call that. So one of the tasks that I found is trying to just wrap my mind around what is contemporary art. So I want to throw that question out to you. In your view, what in the world is contemporary art?
Yeah, I've thought about that a bit. I think I'm a little tired of this discussion that I'm sure you've heard all these times, where people say installation, modern art, such as you see it, Miami, Basel, and stuff, like that's
Yeah.
art, and then everyone who just paints traditionally is kitsch, or they're just repeating old tropes. Like
Right.
I'm kind of tired of that. Um, I think I think what we have going on is because, again, we were talking about technology before, and that scalability thing. Like, we have the ability to see so many different cultures and history layers,
Yeah.
and it's not just like we look at our own history. Like, we can see other civilizations history. Like, each city, like, you kind of dig down, like there's so many different histories that happened in our
Yeah.
world. um and each place you're in is going to have a different lens, and they were mixing, but not to the level we're mixing right now because of instant communication, and then this like digital archive we're building of like music and books and literature, and then
Yeah.
there's current stuff that riffs off the old stuff, and it's even hard to like find out what the true old thing was. And you know so it's um like for example, I mean, like, most of us probably have no idea what real Baroque fashion looked like, because we've seen movies in Hollywood so
Hmm.
long.
Hmm.
And like, for example, the giant hoop skirt panier that everyone associates with like Marie Antoinette and that whole century, that was like about a 5 or 10 year period in the history of the world. And it's just like, when we make a movie, we're like, um, they just bring that costume out and it doesn't match. And real fabric or fashion historians will be like, yeah, that was a tiny part of history.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's just an example of how like we don't really understand history. We think we do, but we don't. And um, so we just have so much going on at the moment that it's hard to pin out what contemporary art is. We might never know, because
Yeah.
if you just look at it all, you'll just gonna blow your mind. So we just gonna go find our own little worlds maybe, and work in those where we're most suited, and then cross over. Like, there's like digital artists and
Yeah.
performance artists and word artists, and all sorts of stuff. I think it's really interesting.
Do you separate? I mean, this is sort of in this conversation of what are these categories? How do we know all of those things? But do you see what's happening in ateliers and realist-based studios as contemporary?
Yeah, just because it is of our
Yeah.
time. And
Yeah.
and again, like, going back to like we don't really know history. Like most people think that what's happening in
Hmm.
ateliers at the moment is historical, but it's actually not. Like, um, if you look into like a few of the different academies, like the ones in Paris in like the latter half of the 19th century, um, you had like a big École de Beaux-Arts, but they
Yep.
didn't teach painting there. They taught like geometry and figure drawing, and different things like that, like ornamental design. And then you had to go study with an actual living, thriving artist. And he might only come in once a week and leave. I mean, it's like it wasn't like the kind of academy people have now.
Yeah.
And there's just so many little differences. And so, probably the biggest difference is that just aren't that many artists making a great living painting churches and portraits, and there aren't any salons at the moment, like there would have been in the latter half of the 19th century in Paris. So, um, you can't recreate that era. So we're making our own version of it, which is
Yeah.
great, but it's so therefore it's modern. It's not a recreation. There's just no way to sustain that old system. Um,
Yeah.
and then there's too many people who would like be in an atelier and be like, well, I'm going to study some digital design, or I'm going to study this, and mix the styles up. And um, though I will say, what's kind of interesting right now is like there seems to be a recreation of the impressionist movement happening, where you have a lot of atelier people who or they think they've been to a real atelier, or they think they know about it, and they're like, I'm gonna leave and do my own thing, and then they start using bright colors and like not finishing their paintings and like making drips, and they're like, I'm rebelling against the system. It's like the atelier system is not a system, you guys. Like that was an old world. You can't have that world anymore. Like it's just some people trying to learn to draw and paint representationally, but it's fun to kind of redo the whole um impressionist movement. So I feel like we're kind of going through that cycle
Yeah.
at the moment, which is kind of fun to watch. And But it's a completely modern thing. It's not, it's not repeating history. It's its own
Yeah.
thing. It might even just be due to like the popularity of that Ross King book, The Judgment of Paris, and other, you know other books that people
Hmm.
read. They get, they get excited and they want to, get it. That's like it's influencing modern art. Yeah, it's really interesting.
So, for anyone who doesn't know, can you recount the training that you've had? And this is sort of a setup to get to the question of you've had a lot of training in atelier-based sort of systems and thinking, and you're making work that feels very much of today. And so I'm interested in you describing how you went from tight academic work to where you're at now.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the difference would be, if you're in school, you're just following a couple um, exercises, and
Yep.
usually most ateliers, with a few exceptions, um, they favor putting students through really long projects. So you end up only making
Hmm.
like 12 pieces during 4 years or
Hmm.
something. Sounds crazy, but it's true. Um, so naturally, when you leave school, you probably can't survive that way, or that's probably not how you want to work, right?
Yep.
So you develop your own practices, and so that's what happened to me. I just um, I used the foundation and
Yeah.
kept going, and I don't know. I'm sure your students already know the Atelier system, because we could discuss it, but then it would take probably like five
Right.
hours. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk, assuming like everyone knows what we're talking about. Does
Yep.
that work?
Sounds good.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. It makes it easier. Um, yeah, I think the Atelier system is just a way to train your eye and brain to draw. Um, Making art, or making these kind of like illusions on flat surfaces is not something that is easy or comes naturally
Hmm.
to people, and so they have to be retrained how to see things. And um, that's what the schools are attempting to do. So they're
Yeah.
not attempting to give a vision, like this is how you should paint. I mean, it's going to be natural that different teachers might have certain preferences of what does and doesn't make a good painting, and
Mm-hmm.
but when you leave, you're going to come up with your own preferences. So
Yeah. Um, so sort of to follow up on that and to keep pushing this idea of individual development after that sort of training, what do you see as some of the most substantial developments in art history in the last, I don't know, 50 or 100 years? And maybe a follow-up question you can take or not take is uh, how have those influenced you?
yeah, probably the biggest one is photography, because we are able to transmit
Yeah.
images in full color, and so that kind of led to this mixing of styles that
Mm-hmm.
we just didn't have in history. Um, so that's a big one, and then of course the digital revolution, like the internet, um, taking then those photographs or the productions and then just spreading them around. One of the interesting things I find is that originality is usually the thing that, if we're just talking about like classical realism,
Yeah.
that's usually the thing we hang on to the most. It's not just like skill and technique, but it's also originality. And I'm wondering if that's going to start eroding, because you know you can post an image and instantly people can see it and they can kind of like be influenced, and
Mm-hmm.
I won't say copy it on purpose, but they can kind of appropriate ideas,
Yeah.
from other people really quickly, and it almost becomes, who's the best marketer,
Yes.
who has the most followers now, and so it's like it's one thing to be George O'Keefe and you're big and famous and everyone knows your work, and then people copy you. But if you're just starting out and people are taking your ideas, I'm wondering if you're going to have that sense of like, I'm an artist, this is my identity, if your ideas are not credited to you and then everyone's doing them.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's this kind of, I think there's probably a word for it. Like, it's like a meme. It's like it just they're going around like memes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a bad thing or not, but it um I think that's something that's interesting, is like originality, and since that's kind of what
Yeah.
defines classical realists, I would say. um I don't know if you saw, but like the artist Matthew Grabelski. I went to school with him at Angel Academy. He got really known for painting men on New York subway cars with animal heads with attractive women, kind of like couples. And the men were always like an animal, and the women were kind of attractive. And they just did this over and over. And he was quite successful. And he was the only one doing it, and it was his idea. Even though when he started, I think people were like, "That's dumb. Why are you wasting your talent on that?" But now it's like he's known for it. And just a few months ago, I think Adobe Creative Suite basically created an ad for Photoshop, and they were creating the same his paintings,
Oh,
but they weren't
wow.
crediting him. So everyone
Wow.
knows Adobe first, so they're going to think, yeah. So who knows? Maybe some random guy who was like freelancing for Adobe stole Matthew's idea,
Yeah.
showed you how you can create like animal men with animal heads on subways, like, and it's it's an animated kind of thing, and it's really
Mm-hmm.
cool. And so he was upset about it, and he was like, "They're
Yeah,
not
for
crediting
sure.
me," and blah blah blah. And as this example of what I'm talking about, um, and I don't know, like, as that continues, I wonder how that's going to affect us. Since we put all this time into learning about not just the style and technique, which can take like 10 years or something to be
Sure.
competent.
Sure.
Um, and then it's like then you have your skill, which we're talking about, but now it's like, unless you're really good at being outgoing and promoting it, and I don't know if there's any reward for that anymore, or will be any reward. And then the second part I was going to talk about was, um, I don't know if this is an important development, but I think it's definitely it's an important development. I think that for the first time in history, we have enough people lifted out of poverty that almost anyone can be an artist, and a
Yeah.
good artist, without even needing to make a living from it.
Yeah.
And that's actually was one of the things that utopianists were always saying, that'll be the future, we'll all just be artists. um,
Hmm.
and so we're kind of living through the beginning of that, which is really interesting, because in the past artists usually had to make a living,
Yeah. Yeah.
or they couldn't afford the materials, or someone was like, go hunt animals, or go build roads,
Right.
clean the house, I don't know. Like they got to avoid labor and menial work, um or even like child raising, because they get to be genius artists. And now it's interesting, now it's more something that like almost anyone can have access to, especially with like internet tutorials for free. um like I don't know, if I were 10 years younger, I don't know if I would have gone to an atelier. Maybe I would have just surfed YouTube and taken workshops.
Mhm.
I used to think that you needed to go to an atelier, but I see a lot of people now who didn't do that and are just as good as people who did, or even better. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe you don't need to do that. Like you can if you want, if you want the structure and that camaraderie with just a few people, and you want to leave your home and travel somewhere, but maybe you don't have to. So I think those are probably like, now, of course, I'm just speaking as a working artist. So, of course, I
Right.
see everything from that point of view. Like, I don't know, if I wasn't an artist at all and I was just a collector with a lot of money, I might be like, this is great. I can buy all this stuff. I don't know. I don't know what I would think. I mean, yeah, if I were like a really rich person, I'd probably be like handpicking all these craftsmen and artists and building some amazing um, museum or house. So I'm sure I'd be really excited. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
that being said, there aren't that many people who are doing that. So maybe you have to be someone who came from the academic training to really appreciate that, to actually want to recreate it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Um, but then I've been thinking about starting a YouTube channel so that I could kind of like control my narrative and
Mhm.
give my side of my art and my
Yeah.
story. And I'm not the best at social media, probably because I'm not young enough to have been raised completely in it. So I'm a little bit off with it. I don't quite get TikTok, for example. Um, my Instagram's been frozen for 2 years. I mean, and I feel like in one case I don't care, but the other hand I'm like, I need to get my numbers up or no one's gonna hire me. So I'm like, I'm worried. So I'm like, let's try YouTube. I'm good with visuals. I think and I'm learning cameras.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm gonna do that. So I watch a couple YouTube channels that are like the really successful ones with like 1 million followers. And I mean, I can hardly watch them because they're promoting products.
Uh-huh.
They're just being really like, they're very sincere, but they're just like, this is what I made for breakfast. This is a product I recommend.
Uh-huh.
Play this video game. And then it's like the art they make isn't even that good. And I'm like, and some of them do good channels and I like them a lot and they have good camera work, but others it's just, I'm like, I can't do that. And then I know
Yeah.
someone who makes amazing art and is thoughtful and they have like 300 followers. So no one's seeing. So I want to try to create the synthesis between that. And I've been told maybe I have a chance because I dress in a more flamboyant way, and
Yeah.
it happens to be my aesthetic. So I'm like, well, maybe I should play to my advantages or something. But I don't know. Like I don't know. It's really confusing sometimes, but other times it's very empowering. Um, and I don't know. I've been told sometimes it's like, well, the people who are quote more serious about art or better, they're slower at getting on these platforms, and things will even out eventually. I hope,
Right.
but I don't know. Oh, it's really funny. So I suppose we have that old wasn't there like the sort of the parable of the gatekeepers, right? Like there were like
Mm-hmm.
the galleries who decided who got to be seen, and they limited the number of who got to be seen, and supposedly they kept the quality. But our problem these days is that a lot of the gatekeepers, we don't respect them anymore. They have
Right.
betrayed ideals of art for some kind of Ponzi scheme, stock investment
Yep.
thing. I don't know. So we're all just going back to the whole. Let's just all promote ourselves. Let's
Yeah.
just go out there to the masses. So now we're kind of I don't know, throwing ourselves in at the masses, and it's like, oh, well, maybe they seem to prefer. I call it non-threatening YouTube videos. So it's like calming music, nothing too difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I see a pulling away from oil paint in difficult mediums. There's no wood carving, there's no marble carving. It's like, you know, it's like, like some markers. It's
Yeah.
always something different. It's always promoting a product. And
Yep.
that's great in a way, and I think a lot of these people are like geniuses because they're paying for their college and they're just doing something. I think they're genius. So I'm not complaining, but I don't know. That's what I kind of feel like the most important developments have been is in art, photography, and the internet. Sorry, someone's scanning.
Calming music.
There we go.
That'll just be the calming music. So we need a product placement.
Yeah.
Buy this natural pigments Rublev lead white #1.
Yeah, that's they're a great company. For example, Natural Pigments, and they have excellent ideas about bringing back some lesser known colors. And I don't think that they charge too much money. I mean, some people will be like, oh, they're too expensive, or I almost feel like there's in a way, oil painting sometimes is it's unpopular because it's an exclusive thing. It's like it costs too much money or it takes too much experience. It's too difficult to learn. There are too many rules.
Yeah.
And I mean, those are true, but once you master those things, it's not that difficult.
Yeah.
So it's worth it, Yeah, I don't know. It's really fascinating to watch it all play out in this kind of quick pace the modern world is in.
Yeah.
And I know I'm probably just seeing stuff from like my corner, so I'm definitely interested in seeing, the whole picture, other people's views. Like, what are your views, for example, from
on Rublev lead white #1?
Sure, I don't know. I guess on like the things I've been saying, for example. I have a lot of friends and we'll talk about this sometimes and they'll be like, I don't see what you're saying, and I'm like, don't, but
No,
maybe we're just different.
I see it
views.
completely. Like, I think that, I've worked with models or students who come through our studio, GACA, who will have, tens of thousands of Instagram followers. And I just see the stuff that they're making. And I think, okay, yes, it's quality, but it's not comparable to other artists that I see who have, a smaller social media footprint, and the either the technical quality or maybe the subject matter is much more advanced, and they're maybe a third of the social media footprint. And it does become, I think, more about how an individual handles what is essentially marketing. And I'm not good at it. Just, my brain just does not think that way. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
But I think that anyone who wants to be a working professional has to at least try. Like, I don't know that it's possible to be a working artist and to not engage that component of the career.
I agree. And that's why it fascinates me, or that's why I pay attention to it, because I'm a working artist.
Yeah.
I definitely don't think it, anyone who's successful should be made fun of or any mocked. I think we should look at what makes them successful and then what do we take or not take from it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, if you wanted to go to an atelier, you, like what I did, you take the skills, but you don't have to pay.
That's right.
Atelier subjects forever. So it's a way of looking at things from a few different points of view.
Yeah, it feels like there's, and It feels like we're in the midst of a learning curve that's happening, um, for sort of like a reshuffling of the deck of the way in which we do this thing of being a working artist. And I'm not quite sure I understand what the rules of the game are or what the trajectories are. And I also wonder, does it always feel that way? Like, an
Mm.
artist 50 years ago, would they have said the same thing, but just with different circumstances? And then 100 years ago, would they have said the same thing? Or
Yeah,
is
like
something, hmm
fashions and tastes change. Like they say
yeah,
Rembrandt was the height of fashion at one point and then
that's right.
bankrupt because it wasn't just because he was spendthrift. He just literally wasn't in fashion anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you
Mm.
see all the things that we're discussing with just it being the 21st century influencing the stuff that you're making? And when I say stuff, I mean paintings, drawings, leggings,
It,
scarves, everything.
I think it goes back to that idea of like the originality and the skill level, which I think
Yeah.
defines, at least what I do, what you do, and people like us. So I'm very resistant to just painting what I see is selling or looks like it's popular.
hmm
Um, I was like that a long time ago. I even stopped when magazines were sort of still a big deal. I stopped subscribing. I had like 5 coming every month, and I was kind of a young. I'm still a very excited artist, but I was like one of those young, open-eyed artists just out of school where you just want to
Yeah.
like look at everything, and you want to read about every solo show that's coming out and every prize and who won what and study everyone's career. And I started to realize it probably wasn't healthy for my creativity because
hmm
I noticed that everyone 1 month that would be getting a certain solo show, it's like, oh, they're kind of doing the same thing, um, or they're kind of doing the same thing here,
Yeah.
and I was like, well, that seems like it's going to get in the way of your originality a little bit, and so um, I was like, I'm just going to stop subscribing. I'll look at the magazines at the bookstore or something, but I'm not going to put that in front of me. And so social media does the same thing. It just puts it
Yeah.
in front of you all the time. So I will also just try not to look at it too much. I'll look something up that I'm interested in, but I don't want to be fed it. But I'll still go in for like the usual, newsfeed scroll just to get
Doom
some of that.
scroll.
Yeah, a little bit, not a lot, but um, yeah, I think it's probably going to affect how people work. But I don't know. I think there's just some people who have a very clear vision of what they want to do, and I think when you're in the throes of making something, you're just so interested in that
Yeah.
that you're not interested in maybe some of those other influences, and so it's powerful enough to just kind of get you through what you're doing. Um, and maybe as we have this world where we have more and more distractions all the time, maybe we're just becoming better at filtering out some of the distractions. Perhaps I would hope. Um, so we're adapting.
I
Mm,
think,
but I think I've always thought it's really helpful to just think of like what you paint is over here, and then the way you market or sell it is over here, and
hmm,
about them separately.
yeah,
That's how I try to do it.
this is going off script a little bit in terms of the questions that I sent you. Are you familiar with Vincent Desiderio's three narratives?
Is that a single painting or is that an idea of his?
It's an idea of his.
I'm not familiar actually. I know his
Okay.
work.
Yeah. So it's pretty straightforward. Every piece of art that's made has three narratives. The first narrative, and I can't remember the names that he uses, but these are the ideas. Um, the subject narrative. So, what is the painting about? And then the technical narrative. How's the painting made? And then the historical narrative. How does the painting fit in with all of art history?
Mm.
And so he says basically, works of art are engaging on those three levels, and really good pieces are poetic on all three of those levels. Um,
Yeah, that's good. I agree with
So,
that.
so I'm interested just to hear you talk a little bit, if you want to, about some of the things that you're working on right now. And if you are willing to self-reflect, how you see some of your work engaging those three narratives.
Right. So remind me again, the technical, historical, and
Subject?
subject. All right. So the technical one, I think that one I put to bed a little bit because I feel like I spent enough time learning how to paint and then self-teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a certain point where if you happen to be one of those people who's kind of technique obsessed, you just I think there's some people are more obsessed with that than others. You just have to say, okay, that's enough. This is as good as I'm going to get, and any further progress is just going to happen with wisdom and age. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
something I can just set myself to because I see a lot of people just staying on like safe subjects or still lifes or
Yep.
they keep studying master copies, and it's like no, you learn by throwing yourself into the deep end and wrestling with big subjects even if you're not ready yet, and so
Yep.
that's what I'm doing now. And the technique is just like I'm just gonna I care about drawing and I'm like interested in exploring color and I love layering paintings up, and I'm just gonna whatever I feel like I'm gonna go that way or this way. I'm not gonna be holding
Yeah.
myself back about the technique anymore. And The nice thing about atelier training is that like once you really get the technique, it's just in you, and so it's not like you choose to use it or not, you just use it.
Yeah.
It's just like your new language, so it's not an effort. So I try to tell students that because for them it's like a lot of effort to paint and draw because they're
Yeah.
thinking about everything, and it's like no, you don't have to think about it. Like I can just listen to a book, an even complicated book, and I'm just painting automatically. And so that's really nice. um, and I think Desiderio has that too. Like
Yeah,
you can see that
for
he's
sure.
got that really well. That's why people are on a surface level attracted maybe to him, and then they like the narrative, and then they. I think everyone kind of sees narratives. Um, I don't know. As far as my narrative, I guess I'm just going for ideas that are compelling or interesting to me. I used to spend a lot of time at art museums in the old sections, so I was looking at old historical paintings and thinking about time and our place in the world and beauty
Yeah.
and trying to but I was also kind of interested in decorative arts a lot as well, so um, I was playing with all those things.
Yeah.
And I think I'm still developing the personal narrative because I finally put the technique to bed. um,
Yeah.
I think it's hard for us as artists because it's not like a photographer where you just push a button and you have, as long as you get the exposure right, you have the drawing done. It's like we
Right.
take like a decade to mature. And I know this because for a long time I was a portrait commission artist, and I still do it. And um, if you're not really good with handling your drawing, your values, you'll just make someone look wrong, and you won't know why, and they won't be happy. So it's like it's just really frustrating. It's not like just taking a photo. You're like, here's
Right.
your photograph. You know what I mean? So um, yeah, so I'm still working with the a personal narrative, and then I guess because I'm always thinking about history, um, then maybe I'm doing the two at the same time, possibly. I don't really think about the historical narrative that much, but I'm always thinking about um, history, evolution,
So I guess
future,
to,
like, things like that. So I don't know if I have like an existentialist worldview, but I'm always thinking about these kinds of things, like
yeah.
in just a curious way, like a kind of a um, biology and just like our place in the world and art as like kind of a distraction. Like these things are just really like always on my mind. So I don't know, that's probably where I am at the moment.
Do you think, I think maybe to clarify his, and if I'm reading him right and understanding his ideas, which I might not be, but the historical narrative is more like, how do you see your work engaging the development of painting over the last 500 years? Is it like, are you talking back to Sargent or Caravaggio or Klimt?
Yeah, I mean, behind me and around me, I have all their books.
Right.
Like they're always, they're always in my head. So, like a lot of people would, like I notice sometimes I'm a little at sea because I don't get sports references, for example, or maybe pop idol references. But like I get all the painting references. So like that's my version of sports and pop idol people as artists. So I'll see like a scene. Well, it's a very Turner weather, or it's Caravaggio lighting. I don't know. It just that person looks like a Rubens, child or something, right? You just kind of see stuff like that. I mean, it's the same with literature and film. You start to make associations. I don't know, as far as like advancing the narrative. Well, this is the part where I think the points I was making earlier about the amount of people who do art and the way there are just so many voices, and then the originality possibly being lost in kind of this meme generating way. I don't know if any individual artist is as important anymore as they might have been a couple hundred years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like you could say like there are a few artists like Damien Hirst or something, but I don't know if any of us, even Desiderio, have reached that level of renown. And especially if you look at social media, I mean, we're down here. We're not as interesting as chickens on Roombas, and I don't know, I'm just joking, but you know what I mean?
But it's
like
exactly
so
right.
I don't know if we are influencing anything. I mean, we are for the people we're reaching, and we're reaching a lot of people, and the world's population is huge. So I don't know if anyone's ever done this, but the amount of people who do care about classical realism, maybe that population would be equal to the people who were living back in Caravaggio's day. So maybe it's the same. I don't know. I haven't like looked into it that way, but yeah, I don't know. I think the painting it affects certain people very profoundly, and who knows how it's going to affect people in the future. Like no one knows that, but at the moment it seems like it's just one of many games that you can play out there, which is great. Just freedom.
Yeah.
People can do what they want.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I think people are like people are looking at film photography and like animation more. So
I think you're right.
those people might be looking at us and stealing our ideas.
To put into
for
movies.
real. Yeah, like I can think of like 3 examples where that might have happened already. But like, so yeah, I guess we're influencing things sort of.
Yeah.
We also paint too slow. I mean, we paint too slow for the modern pace. The modern pace is just so quick that I've thought about this. I mean, even if you were an alla prima painter and you could just whack out something in a few hours or a day, you're still too slow compared to like, a film or a photograph session.
Yeah. I mean,
or a whole team of people working versus you. So there might be a problem with the speed of delivery. And
do you think there's something in us that, well, I'm not going to couch this as a question because it's more me making a statement. I think that it's possible that there's something in us that desires slowness in the face of quickness.
Yeah.
So what role do you see as the work we're doing playing in addressing that?
Well, I mean, I think you could definitely say that for a lot of people, fine art makes a huge difference in their lives.
Yeah.
In their life, whether they're consuming it or collecting it or sponsoring it, which is a huge role. And then or they've like given their lives over to it.
Yeah.
And then there's another category which is growing, I think, which is like people who aren't going to give their lives over to it, but they're going to do it maybe for like 10 years or maybe like every once in a while, but you get a lot of people who come to it from different career paths or places, and it's very important to them. You could argue that it might even be more important to them than to someone who's just been painting their whole life, but decides to stop because it wasn't really what they wanted to do, and then someone else who's coming to it like at 60 and it's like so important to them, like you could say that it's affecting them more. I don't
Hmm.
know. I think it definitely has an important effect on people's lives.
Um, Two sort of final questions to wrap up. Take your pick, one or both. What opportunities do you see for people who have been trained with realist or representational painting? And what stories would you like to see those people tell with their artwork?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunities. Um, I think probably the best one is just to make art. I think a lot of people get distracted and they don't make enough work. So
Yeah.
keep making the work. But there's, exhibiting, there's illustrating. Like I've seen people be part of like giant book projects where they're making
Hmm.
giant paintings for years. There's there's so many things you can do. Film, um, and then of course there's like the whole gallery representation, art fair if you can break into that. I know a lot of people try. I don't know how well it works. Just building your own community. I think that's
Yeah.
probably a big one that doesn't get talked about a lot, but just building your own community. Um, and then getting to interact with people and other communities and um, but I mean, yeah, hopefully, you'd get your big projects, like whatever those would be, like painting giant murals or uh, I don't know, like whatever it is. Hopefully, you get it. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
right? Or if it's just opening your own school, like there's so many things you can do. And then there's the internet to kind of broadcast it out there.
The democratization of information.
Yeah, I think that's probably something we should maybe that'll have to be a course, and I don't think it needs to be. I'm joking, but that's probably something we need to get better at. Um, I don't know. I think you're right. Like there needs to be bigger, maybe narratives and yeah, I don't know. It's a hard one, isn't it? It feels like
Yeah.
there's just so much to think about, isn't there? Wait, what was the second question?
Um, what stories would you like to see realist artists tell more of? So,
Mm.
like political stuff, mythical stuff, average everyday things.
I think probably the they should tell the stories they're most interested in. So
Hmm.
they're going to be better at telling whatever it is they want to tell and not trying to tell someone else's or
Yeah.
go. But then people are always saying go out of your comfort zone. But I think telling the thing you're most interested in is going to work out the best, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Especially for a time intensive career that has a high learning curve and not a lot of financial reward unless you're clever. Um, you might as well just stick with the thing you're most interested in because it's already so much,
That's right.
right, to juggle. And yeah, I think that their story or their interests.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's great. Teresa, thank you so much for joining my class. I've appreciated this conversation, and I think that the students and any other listeners will appreciate it as well. Before we sign off, why don't you just tell anyone who's watching or listening where they can find your work and some things that you have going on?
sure. I have my website teresaoaxaca.com. I have a YouTube channel I've started, Teresa Oaxaca. Instagram, Teresa Oaxaca. I always get my name. I guess I'm even on TikTok.
You're on TikTok. I have
I
to
don't know how
find you.
I have like 3 posts. I have 2 followers, but I'm on TikTok. And let me see what else I have. I've started to learn filmmaking, so I can start to put out like maybe like little documentaries about my paintings. And when as things are opening up, my travels
Hmm.
and things like that. Yeah, I know it's a weird time because there's so many things you can't do in person. So I would be trying to have exhibitions with physical
Yeah.
paintings on the wall in a large space. preferably some kind of classical space, and the show should be up for like a month at least, and there should be like 30 paintings, and they should be big and real, not prints. I really like the physicality of things, like that's why I like painting. So it's hard at the moment because you can't have that,
Mhm.
but I hope to get back to that soon.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks for talking. And when things do get back to normal, I look forward to you coming to St. Louis and possibly teaching
Yeah,
at GACA.
yeah. I'll tell you a funny joke.
All right,
Wait, you still recording it?
hold on.